We are live. We're live. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another installment of Leaders Insight with myself, Nick Baxter of Baxter Williams and IsoNation. I am really pleased to welcome a good friend of mine and client in Sarah Radley of Inksmoor. Sarah, welcome to you this afternoon. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Nick. Nice to be here.
Excellent. Well, lovely to see you. And I know you're extremely busy. I've been trying to get you on as a guest for some time. I know you've seen a couple of our other Leaders Insights interviews. The essence of Leaders Insight, and I suppose more importantly, the essence of IsoNation, was to create a collective of business leaders, organisations, and businesses to kind of create a bit of a collective, sharing best experience, sharing evolving strategies, and basically creating a bit of an external network of support for people as they essentially navigate the changing landscape.
Yeah.
And it's bizarre because I think we're on our 70 odd day of lockdown, but it's so bizarre because the conversations we had 2 weeks into lockdown, the conversations I've been having over for example, the last couple of weeks have really changed. I think there's still certainly a degree of uncertainty, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But I think the landscape is clearing a little bit easier. Aim of today is really find out a little bit more about your journey and Inksmoor's journey, pre, during, and then we make some, hopefully some crystal ball assumptions about the future, which no one's really qualified to make. But lovely to have you here. And before we start, I've just got to say, let's see who's on so far. Hi, Rachel. So anyone that's out there, if you'd like to comment, more importantly, please share this amongst your network. If you've got any questions, both myself and Sarah will endeavour to answer those as we go through the interview. So I always start Leaders Insight with what was your OMG moment? What was your OMG moment when you realised that COVID-19 or Corona in its early days, is named either or? When did you make that connection that this was pretty much here to stay and it was going to be slightly impactful on everyone's lives moving forwards?
Yeah, I think it's difficult to say if there was one moment. I think when Italy and Spain locked down, because we have some international clients that supply into those two countries specifically, we saw an immediate effect on their turnover and their business. And we kind of knew that we thought it might be coming. But the reality didn't really hit until Boris made his announcement. And then it was like, okay, so everything we've been talking about for the past few weeks has actually now just happened. So all the conversations around, oh, no, it'll be fine. Yeah, schools won't close, it'll be fine, but yeah, it all happened and it all happened really quickly. And I think that's what took a lot of people by surprise is the speed at which it happened. And I think if we hadn't have been having those conversations in the weeks beforehand, then I think it would have been more difficult for us as a business.
Well, you know what? It's funny you should say it. Two things you mentioned there, schools closing, because there's a couple of things where it becomes quite final, doesn't it? There's a couple of things that happen, which means, wow, nobody's shielded from this. So whether you've got kids or not, schools closing impacts you, impacts your colleagues, impacts the way that we all operate. Mine was a Cheltenham moment, actually. A couple of Andrew Hunt, who was our guest last week, he said his was a Twickenham moment, a sport, and it's normally a sporting or business where that level of disruption means it's gonna happen. And I think you like everyone, hindsight's a great thing, and this program in particular, it hasn't got a political steer at all. And whether we dealt with things right or wrongly in the first place, we've put actions into place which we're sticking by, and hopefully we'll see us come through the back end. But yeah, those first few days post Boris, everybody was like, wow, this really is happening. So going back to business, and before we talk about the impact of the business, it'd be really nice actually to give you a bit of a selfless plug and talk a little bit more about Inksmoor. Inksmoor is obviously you're a client of mine. I've known you for a number of years. Your business is phenomenal, and actually your business is really phenomenal amongst the areas you operate in, and you've admitted it before. And I know you're rebranding. We'll talk a little bit more about the rebrand in terms of the spreading the Inksmoor name beyond your normal remit. Tell us a little bit about Inksmoor and what you do to kind of give us some context on how you've been affected by the COVID situation. Sarah.
Okay, so Inksmoor is effectively split into two. It is finance, provision of finance for invoice finance and also for bridging and secured loans. And the second side of our business is outsourcing. So that's outsourcing of things like credit control, payroll, accounts, anything to do with the accounting function. So in terms of impact, the outsourcing side, not really so much. A couple of our clients are directly affected by retail. So we've temporarily suspended services at their request, which is fine and completely understandable, and you have to adapt to these things. The other side of the business, because it's transactional, for instance, a secured loan is based on a property. You can't get a borrower out. You can't value the property. You can't lend against it. So that effectively has been very, very quiet, and you have to find a different way of working things. Invoice finance, I think, as a whole has been affected because if businesses don't have turnover, they don't have invoices to assign to a lender, and therefore we make our money from our clients assigning their invoices. Exactly. So the actual invoice finance industry as a whole has taken a little bit of a knock, actually, in the past 3 months. Starting to see a few little green shoots, but it's difficult because without those businesses trading, it has a massive impact on that side of the business.
No debtor book is there. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, listen, and thank you for giving us that insight, because as we said before, you're rebranding your business so people know more about you, because you operate within a little specialist circle. But I suspect there are people, because you're a national business, that when I know what you do, I always use the opportunity to tell people that actually coming out of this, we're finding lots of organisations rebranding and changing their offering to suit the changing landscape. But as I say, we'll talk about that a little bit later. So in terms of that OMG moment, which made you realise that perhaps this was going to be a bit more of an issue than we previously thought, what was the first thing you did? I mean, how did you initially react, and what were the precautionary measures that you, from an Inksmoor finance group perspective, did straight away?
Oh, two things, actually. First thing was look at our systems and our ability of our team to work from home. And secondly, talk to our clients. The first thing we did was we picked up the phone to our clients and we said, look, how do you think this is going to affect you? What are you going to need from us, whether it be from a finance perspective or from a support perspective? For instance, we had a client who had to, when the furlough scheme was announced, he furloughed a number of his staff, and we filled a little bit of a gap in what they were doing, so that we picked up more work from that side of things. So it was about understanding the implications for our client, and only when we understood the implications for the client could we understand how it was going to affect us as a business.
Lovely.
From a systems perspective, it was about those first few weeks when everything started happening in Europe. It was kind of, let's look at our systems, what's going to work, what isn't going to work. And I identified people that maybe didn't have enough robust software or hardware at home, looking at their broadband, were there people that could only work from the office? Childcare provision, 95% of my staff are female.
Wow.
And I would say 60% of those have children of school age. So again, it was just understanding what implication that would have for them and what support network they had around them. And only when you understood that could you then start to put things in place that could actually work. And then it was about, we think that's going to work, let's try it. We did Microsoft Teams. Best thing we've ever done.
Yeah.
Best thing we've ever done. And I know there's other providers out there and all like that, but for us, it's been fantastic. It's just allowed that a level of communication and then some, whilst not being in the office.
Wow. And you know what? It's so funny you say that, because we talk about childcare again. We're the same. 95% of my team are female. Luckily, there aren't that many that have got children, but it's been the ones that have, and there's a couple of guys in there. It's been a massive impact. Particularly one individual that works for me, they have got their partner's a key worker, so they've had to juggle work with furlough and childcare. The level of disruption has been amazing. I think the biggest point that you said there was once we understood what the impact was going to be on our clients, we then put steps in place. And I think there are so many bottlenecks in supply chain, and there are so many gaps in the domino chain whereby you have to put that extra domino in to understand exactly what the end of it looks like.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen straight away, did it?
No, it didn't. And businesses we thought would be unaffected then became affected. And so you have to change your strategy based on that. We had one of our clients, long-standing clients, been with me for 14 years. They're robust. They're a long-standing business. I found out last week they're in significant trouble. So you can't predict this thing. It's just about keeping the lines of communication open with our clients. And actually, it's been really good because there's been more reliance, more communication between our clients and their client managers. So each client has their dedicated client manager, whether it be on the finance side or the outsourcing side. And I think their relationship has improved because there has had to be more communication, because those normal lines that are within an organization, they might not be there because they might be furloughed.
So true.
So it's just about expanding on that and keeping talking and then adapting, really.
So the big thing you mentioned there, and it's a thing that kind of keeps coming back, is communication. And we'll talk a little bit more about the team and what you've done from a evolving strategy perspective. But that everyone I'm speaking to, because the three things we need to look after: cash is the first one, people are the second one, and our processes. And regardless of where they are in the scheme of things, you need to communicate to everybody. And I think everybody has been, it's ironic really, because most people, as soon as it's happened, there was a grant system that was available for people. There's been all kinds of financial support, but I suppose the biggest one has been anyone that's had any commitments. They had to speak to the people they've got those commitments with and said, listen, things are really tight. Can you bear with us? And your business revolves around that, because a hell of a lot of your business revolves around credit control. You've got your outsourced accounts function. How have you found interacting on behalf of your clients with the people that owe them money? How have you found that work from a without obviously relaying too much confidential information from a theory perspective?
It's tough. It's definitely hard work. The feedback I'm getting from Sarah, who runs that side of it, another Sarah, who runs that side of it, and her team, is that there is a little bit more by email than previously you would have done, because we like to do the vast majority of our chasing work by telephone. But it's about, again, adapting. So working slightly differently. Normally you do a call and then follow it up with a call. Well, maybe you're doing a call and following it up with an email this time, just to make sure that message is going through. Finding that people have been furloughed. Well, who is dealing with it? And again, it's just about digging that little bit deeper, but it is hard. It is hard. And I have to say, we have seen a small increase in our debtor days, if you like, for our clients, but only by 6 days.
Wow. Okay.
So we were really happy with that, because considering that, a lot of businesses, some shut down completely. Considering the situation that there has been over the past 12 weeks, I was very happy with that, and our clients were as well. So
6 days. That in itself is, and you know what, if you'd have predicted, in hindsight, listen, this is all going to happen. If someone had said, listen, this is all going to happen, this is going to be the impact to your organization, but more importantly, it's going to be the impact to a number of your clients, how many days do you think it would be? You'd probably err on the side of caution and say it's probably going to add another 2 to 3 weeks to my debtor days.
Oh yeah, I fully expected it. Fully expected it to be horrific.
And that's down to comms. That's definitely got to be down to comms, because we all know from a credit control perspective, there's a couple of people do, when people are owed debt or when people have got bad debt, two things people do. They either really robust, really abrasive, and rub the person up the wrong way, which means you wait a little bit longer for your money, or they bury their head in the sand and go, oh, it's okay, I won't chase them up, it'll be fine. The fact that you've made it 6 days is you've cut between that and you've just said, listen, it's a tough situation all round. Where can we be and how soon can we get there?
Absolutely, and a lot of that has been about making some arrangements and being realistic about what's achievable. there's no point stamping your feet and insisting things are going to get paid if they're not, it's not possible. So again, it's taking a realistic view, again, opening up the lines of communication, and whilst preserving our clients' cash flow as best we can. There's no point, like you say, going into aggressive, because, the shutters come down. We had one chap that said, well, if you chase me harder, I'm just going to dispute it all. And our client has credit insurance, so it has a massive impact. So it's about negotiating that. It's been hard, but persistence and talking things through and trying to find solutions. I don't think anybody doesn't want to pay. Mm-hmm. I just think it's about getting to those people, and actually it's been easier probably to get to the decision makers, because a lot of bigger firms have had their accounts teams furloughed, for instance, and you tend to get the answer from maybe an FC or an FD that you wouldn't before. You'd normally been talking to
a couple of layers behind. No,
yeah, in some ways it's played as it's had a bonus in that, if you can call it a bonus in that respect, is that you're actually talking to the people that are going to make those decisions about who's on the payroll and who isn't.
Yeah, and you know what? Again, a number of points that have come through consistently when speaking to leaders on Leaders Insight over the last 3 to 4 months. The communication bit and the understanding bit. It's the understanding. We talked about the benefits of communicating and having open, clear channels, but actually, people have become a lot more human. And you normally find this: human beings that go through some kind of shared experience at a time of crisis, they tend to have more in common than before that, because it breaks down the barriers, it breaks down everything, and everyone's a little bit more human. And what we found is that interacting with people are less likely to go on SLAs. They're more likely to be a little bit more understanding. And I'm hoping, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, some of the good stuff that comes out. I'm hoping that maintains as soon as we get back to business as the new normal or business as usual. I hope we don't lose that. And certainly you'll probably find, your clients will find, because we're finding it now, we've got clients that have got challenges. The people that you're having those challenges around rates with, and those people you're having those challenges and they're flexing around where you'd normally be quite rigid, it goes a long way in creating a little bit of goodwill moving forwards. So before we crack on, I've got to recognise a few people. There might be some of your friends as well. We've got Sharon Radford here. So hi, Sharon. Laura Gurney, how are you? Becky Dawson, good to see you. And our weekly trawler in Paul Evans here. Thank you, buddy. He said, hope you're well and safe. Apart from he's just experienced a worst car journey, 2.5 hours not being able to sync his phone in the car. So hopefully we can make it a little bit brighter now, Paul. And Mark Luther Thomas, thank you. Rachel just said we used Teams to just start a couple of months ago before lockdown. Thank goodness. Hasn't a lot of the going off track a little bit? Hasn't a lot of the mobile working apps, Teams, a lot of video conferencing, Zoom, whichever you use, Google Hangouts. This stuff has revolutionized the way people have communicated. In terms of, it leads me on quite nice to my next question. The workforce, because I suppose we talked about cash, we talked about process, we talked about people. In terms of people, what's been the biggest impact you've seen to the team, and kind of how have you reacted to some of those impacts?
Okay, well, we're not unaffected by this like any other business. I've had to furlough a few members of my team, just the same as every other business, I think. It's about preserving jobs for the long term at the end of the day. In terms of how they've been affected and how they've taken it, they've been really good. They've been very open to working differently. Mm-hmm. A lot of them are working probably longer hours, I would say. And I don't know whether you've seen that, and people have commented on that. But going in and seeing that people are already logged in at 8:15 in the morning or 8 o'clock, and they're still logged on at 6. It's a different way of working, but they've adapted quite well to working from home. We want to start bringing people back in gradually, but get back to the old problem, which is childcare. Yeah, childcare. What do our teams do? What do our people do? So it's just about using those technologies and harnessing them in a way that allows us to manage, because we are a business and we do have to manage our team. Not that they need micromanaging, they're quite independent and they can work independently, but we need to ensure that we're providing the service that we say we're going to do to our clients. So not only is it just about them working, it's about our ability to manage them remotely as well. So it's been a learning curve, I think, from both sides, but without Zoom and Teams. I'll give you an example. So one of our clients is based in Dubai, and they supply doctors. And he was always on the phone to Sarah, who's my ops manager, and it was getting to the point where it was constant. So Sarah said, well, why are we doing this? I've never met you. You're in Dubai. We're in the UK. Why don't we just do this via, I think it was at the time. And so now that's how they communicate. And that's brilliant. And that's happened much more with our clients, that normally, because we're an outsourced agency, we don't get to see our clients very often. We go down, every quarter or every 6 months or whenever we need to see them. But we don't get to have that day-to-day interaction. And I think that has changed. And I think that's been really good for the team, because they feel more invested in their clients because they've got that face-to-face discussion. And I just think that will continue, and I'm going to encourage that. So even when they're back in the office, I want them to continue doing that, because I think it's really important. Because when you're an outsourced service, sometimes you feel a bit out on a limb. And you don't feel, we always say we're part of your team, and we are part of your team. But I think that's really difficult. But I think now, using this technology and having more of that interaction, I think that just really cements that message, is that we are, and they feel we are, and our team feel like they are as well.
I love it. You know what? That's a perfect example. And when we talk about it towards the end of the interview, and we talk about, tell me about some of the good things that have come out of this. It's more around, tell me some of the good things that have come out of this. It's normally about socio-economic as opposed to business process, but actually to find something that makes you live up to the values of, we're part of your team, we're an extension of your business, we're a partner. And instead of it being something that you say, actually now you've been able to create a process that's improved to such a degree that actually it now becomes protocol. Yeah. So what was your mindset around, I want to just play around the remote working, because I'm really keen to understand people's mindsets pre-COVID-19 around remote working, because we've always done it. And I'm not too bad. As long as we're in the office 3 days a week and we've got some semblance of a culture in a collective, I'm really flexible around it. What was your mindset before this?
Well, we already had people working from home, so we had some experience with it anyway.
Okay.
It was always been around. I wasn't averse to it. When I used to work for my previous employer before I set up Inksmoor, I was home based.
Okay.
So I also knew the challenges that brought from, back in the old days, proper dial-up thing. You can always hear the noise in the background, can't you?
Yeah.
So from that to just keeping yourself motivated, feeling as though you're still part of a team. So my issue was not such around, is it possible? Because we'd already done it. It was, how do we maintain what we have now remotely?
Lovely.
And that was the biggest challenge for us. There are 2 or 3 members of my team now that really don't want to come back to the office.
And is that sorry to interrupt, is that because they're because a lot of people in the office can sometimes get distracted. A lot of people in the office don't work the same. What's the mindset behind them not wanting to come back? Is that because they've just seen increased productivity? They've got a bit of a journey in the morning. They've got a bit of a commute. Actually, you're going to get so much more from me now, Sarah. If now that we can be trusted collectively. Not that you didn't trust them before, but now that we know it's a proven quantity within the business. Yeah. Is that the mindset?
I think it is, and actually the productivity has gone up. But I think what I'd like to have is, I'm not adverse and I don't want to talk about HR decisions right now, but because they'll all be assessed on their individual merit, of course. Mm-hmm. But I'd like to see a bit more of a hybrid. And I think if it's So, for instance, a lot of our accounts teams are working for recruitment agencies such as yourself, where they've got contractors and things like that. So they have certain days of the week where they're extremely busy, timesheet days and payroll and things like that.
Monday, Friday.
So they find that those days, being at home, they're much more productive. They're not distracted, and that's great. And that's great. And that's something that I want to encourage. I don't have a magic wand. I can't just create an office for them all here. You know, if I could, that would be great, but I can't. I have to listen to them and listen to what they're saying to me, which is, and the proof is in the pudding, is that they are more productive. They are getting more done. Would I like to see people permanently at home? No, of course I don't. You know, it's really important that we have our team together at some point, maybe not all the time, but I think it's good for team development, interaction, everything. But there's a hybrid option, I think, moving forward.
And you know what? It's so funny because I've just finished a call earlier. I'm part of APSCO, which you all know APSCO. They're the membership body for recruiters, and we had a kind of leaders Zoom. We had 30 recruitment owners talking about how we're going to bring furloughed people back and maintaining employee engagement and maintaining culture. And I think you're right. A number of people had said, well, you know what? My guys are loving the working from home. They're really productive. But then we also said, you know what? Recruitment's a funny profession because it takes a while to be proficient, and actually you're proficient through osmosis. So that osmosis you get from being around experienced operators, being around and hearing and listening to conversations and seeing how they're delivering value and how they're looking after candidates and clients and delivering that value and adding and being consultative. That cannot come. You can't be a new recruit in a business and allow that osmosis to occur remotely. So you're right, there has to be a hybrid. And I think there were a couple of people on that call and a large recruitment business that turns over tens of millions of pounds, independent, owned by a good friend of mine, that have said, you know what, we're not going to take the option on our London office. When we've in lockdown, London is one of our core offices. We've decided we're actually going to keep people working remotely. And what they actually said was they actually invested in someone's garage because a couple of the people live quite close. They're going to convert that into an office, and they'll do their catch-ups with 2 or 3 people going along to their new home office. What a great way of maintaining the culture. So from a cultural perspective, you've already mentioned 2 things where you say you've had improvement. You've had improvements around that customer-facing interaction. You know, if we can't do it face-to-face, let's not hide behind the phone. Let's see the whites of people's eyes on a Zoom or a video call. And you've also talked around productivity's also gone up. From a culture perspective, has there been any effect on culture? Because I run another business, as you well know, called Connect, which is an employee engagement business. So I really have a problem if I had a culture issue in my business. I'd really have a problem seeing this is what I do for a living. But we know that it's at this time. Again, we talked about it in the call previously. People are starting to creak. Those that have been on furlough now for 3 months, starting to creak. There's only so much you can do to maintain the culture. There's only so many beers on Zoom you can do. There's only so many quizzes you can do. There's only so many learning. You know, people are creaking. How have you felt it? I mean, have you started bringing some people back? I mean, what's been the overall effect on the culture?
Mixed, I would say. I think where we've had new projects in, people have felt good and positive about the future, and they've been cracking on with that, and we're still getting new work through. I think it's difficult to keep that where you have got people that are on furlough. I think it is difficult to try and keep that conversation going. So we'll talk about the rebrand of the outsourcing in later on. But for instance, on the launch, we had people that were on furlough as part of that, because it's important that they felt that they were part of that. So when we did our internal launch earlier in the week, a couple of people that were on furlough were part of that. So that is trying to feel that they're inclusive. Nobody has the answer. Nobody knows 100% what is going to be the outcome. The only thing you can do for your team is to say, we're working as hard as we can to make that happen.
Love it.
I've had people on furlough and brought them back.
Brilliant.
And I think it's just about, it's evolving. Every week is different.
You know, again, we keep going back to it, and you talk about the communication bit. The thing that's affected by people's like mood and mindset is the uncertainty. It's the uncertainty that's breaking everyone. And unfortunately, until furlough becomes flexible the first week of July and we work out the true intentions of organisations keeping people or using furlough as a way of saving some cash, knowing that they're going to have to reduce their workforce. When that comes out, the landscape will be clearer. When the landscape's clearer, whether it's good or bad, at least we know we can make some. We've got better informed decisions, and I think then those decisions will filter through and cascade through organisations to the staff, which will either fill them with more confidence or give them a reason to be worried. But at the moment, I think what you're saying is what everybody's doing, and great leaders and great cultures revolve around that communication. We go back to it. It's one of the most simple things in the world, which people which can get overlooked. But to keep that, it really honest, where you said, some people are great, some people aren't. The tough thing we found, and a number of other businesses have found, is the guys that have been furloughed. So we've had one of our guys who came back 2 weeks ago. She made 3 offers today, which is great because that means that people are recruiting, particularly in our area. But the other guys that are furloughed, it's not uncommon for them to feel like they're just out of the loop a little bit. So I think the biggest thing we've done is said we're all a team, whether you're working or whether you're furloughed, we're all a team. And you've said it as well in terms of communicating with people to let them know they're still part of that team, whether it's remote, whether it's working in the office. They've still got a way of expressing themselves. They've still got a way of contributing. Obviously, they can't work when they're furloughed, but we have a catch up at 10 o'clock every day, and we celebrate all the successes of the people that are working. The guys that are furloughed, they've got training plans and they're doing stuff. So it's just about keeping that. So again, we come back to communication. In terms of, we've got Gemma's just said here, it seems to be a common opinion, the mixture of pros and cons with working from home. And she said she can see a much higher demand for ad hoc office space. I agree. There's definitely going to be more hybrid office space, using your own term earlier. It's going to be around, people still need a hub, people still need a culture, people still need a working environment. Whether or not you're going to need 20 seats now, or whether or not you only need 10, whether you hot desk, whether you rotate. And I think when it all comes through in terms of social distancing in the office, there's going to have to be a lot of rotation because you're not going to be able to have the same bums on seats in the office. And I think that will then create the next wave of how we rotate that space to make sure we've still got an office, but actually there's still an onus on people being able to have that autonomy. Jake Mann has just come on, Claire Harrison has just cracked as well, and Becky Dawson again. So cheers, guys. If you guys got any questions, feel free to throw them at both me and Sarah. So Sarah, I'm going to come back to, we're going to talk a little bit about when what you're going to do when we come out of lockdown. Then we'll talk a little bit more about the impact and your predictions on what's going to happen in the wider landscape. And believe me, I'm not going to be holding you to this, so don't worry about it. It's more of an informed crystal ball. And then we'll talk a little bit about what's going to happen in your industry and wider, and one of the good things that comes from it. But first of all, what I want to say is, because lockdown looks like, without again putting you on the spot, it looks like lockdown is going to come to an end in the next 5 to 6 weeks, I think. What do you think that will look like after that comes after we come out of lockdown? Oh,
I wish I knew. I really from a personal perspective, first thing I'm doing is getting my hair done and having a pint.
In what order?
Actually, I'm going to get my hairdresser to bring wine, so then I can do both together. Then I don't have to wait. So,
you know what? It's so funny because that's a lot of people have been saying what they're going to do when lockdown finishes, and that's the one thing I'm looking for. The one thing I miss is, you know what I'm like? I'm all about hugs. I'm all about hugs. I'm a really tactile person. That's the one thing I really miss. I went to see my mum on Friday, and I go to the butcher's every week, and every 2 weeks I drive to Birmingham, drop the meat off for mum and dad, and bring the girls, and we social distance in the garden. And she came to give me a hug, and I said, "Mum, no, not yet. I think we're probably a month away from it. So first thing you're going to do is get your hair done and have a glass of fizz. All right, well, make sure that I'm around to do that." Yes, indeed. And then the next question I'm going to ask is, how long do you think we're going to feel the impact of this? Because some people are saying it's unlike a normal recession. There's talks of 20% of organisations won't be here. A fifth unemployment's going to be the highest it's been for a while. But it's not a normal recessive situation because the pandemic's caused it. So there's a school of thought that says we're going to have a bit of a dip, then we're going to have a sharp rise, then it's going to even out. And again, not holding you to this at all. It's always nice to get everybody's insight. Some people are gut, some people it's economics, some people is talking to other thought leaders in their space. Sometimes they're talking to people outside of their normal sector of operation. What are your thoughts?
I'd like to think it would be a nice V-shaped recovery. I don't think it will be, if I'm honest. I think it might be a bit of a W. I think we might have a little rise back up. I think it will come down to a couple of things. It will come down to people's ability to work. And again, it comes back to childcare and schools and all those kind of provisions. And it's the people, the businesses that have actually taken the time to look at their business. One thing that came through my mind when we were talking earlier was, I will never have, and I don't know whether you feel like this, I will never have an opportunity such as this to sit back and look at what's right and wrong in my business. Okay. And I think if people are doing that, then I think there could be a robust recovery. Will it be as quickly as everyone wants? No, I don't think it will be, because I think the government have done a very, very good job of scaring people half to death. I was talking to a contact of mine this morning, and he's got people that are flatly refusing to come back into the office. They came into the office literally wearing a hazmat mask and are so terrified that they're working from home. So I think that the message that the government have got across, albeit it was required at the time, I think now people need to feel confident of coming out of that. And we talked before we were on live about people queuing to get into certain high street stores and things like that. But there does that to happen. Those shops need to be reopening, bars need to be reopening, hotels. Any small businesses are built on supplying other small businesses generally, unless you're lucky enough to get large, massive contracts. Okay? So if those smaller businesses aren't trading, then their supply chain isn't trading. And so you have to start to recover. It won't be quick, in my opinion. I think although the housing market seems to be quite stable at the moment, there's an uplift in values outside of London, which goes back to people not wanting to be in London, not needing to be in London. Now, I've got a friend of ours who's a trader in London. He's been told not to come back in the office till January.
Wow. Because
he loses 3 hours a day commuting, but he's still doing the same hours at home. So he's making them more money. So things will look very different. And I think it will take I would like to think that we would start to see some signs of, especially on our finance side, we should start to see some signs over the next quarter to 6 months. But I think there are going to be significant casualties.
Lovely.
I think that people have taken on loans that they couldn't necessarily afford because of the law of not paying it back for 12 months or really low interest rate. And if that doesn't happen in the next 12 months, then in 12 months' time, we're looking at a raft of problems of businesses taking on loans that they can't afford.
Yeah.
So there'll be businesses that will naturally just fall over because their trade will disappear. And no amount of loans or anything like that is going to help that. And I think we'll start to see that towards I sound like doom and gloom, don't I? But I think we'll start to see that towards the end of the year, beginning of next year. And we work a lot with insolvency practitioners, and they're quietish at the moment, but they're expecting a raft of insolvencies probably towards the end of this year, beginning of first quarter of next year.
Yeah.
And I just think businesses just need to look at what they're doing. Can they do things differently? But if your trade's disappeared, your trade's disappeared.
Yeah. You know what? I said lovely earlier. I didn't mean lovely, as in you were talking about something which was, and don't worry about sounding doom or gloom. These are really realistic conversations, and everyone's perception is different, but everyone's perception, the people that we've interviewed on IsoNation, is that, we're going to have a bit of a rocky road. And the big thing I want to latch on, because we're not economists and we know it's going to be rocky, and we know that we're delaying the grants, CBIL and bounce back. will help organize. The aim of them is to help organizations. Yeah. However, for a large proportion, they will prop up businesses, and for another proportion of people, they are delaying the inevitable. Yes. So we know this. So it's not doom or gloom. This is fact. The one thing I will latch onto, and it gives me an opportunity to talk a little bit. I'm rebranding at the moment, so I'm looking at the first thing we do. We talk about cash processes, people. I'm looking at my internal process. I'm also, the big thing I'm looking at is actually there's going to be a new landscape. And as a result of the new landscape, what will your new offering be that's going to differentiate you from your competition? And then if you've got a new offering, how are you going to communicate that? And you mentioned earlier, you never ever get a chance. Two things you mentioned. First thing you mentioned, senior people are accessible at the moment. You're right. I've never been able to speak to as many senior people as I have done at the moment, because they normally they've got a number of people in between them, subordinates in between them that are gatekeepers to have that conversation. And actually, they've got a bit more time on their hands. There's only so much strategizing you can do when you're not trading at optimum and you're not traveling to London and you're working from home. People are just a little bit more accessible. And the people I'm speaking to that are more accessible are doing, as you say, looking at their business and deciding, what can I do to create some efficiencies? What can I do to differentiate myself? What can I do to create competitive advantage in the new landscape? So I'm going to allow you to have a little bit of a shameless plug here, and tell me a little bit about, because I'm rebranding, but I'm not going to talk about my rebrand. I'm just going to put the website. I'm going to put my new website up on all of the IsoNation stuff. But for you, tell me a little bit about what you're doing. So I know you've got your new marketing lady who I spent last week, and she was a breath of fresh air. And I speak to marketeers all the time, vibrant, personable, knowledgeable. And I've always told you need to market that business more, because you've got a blooming brilliant business. You need to market this. Clearly, whether it was this that's happened, I think it looks like you've put the plans in before this had all happened. But tell me a little bit about the rebrand and about the new narrative from Inksmoor post through COVID.
Okay, so Inksmoor has always been Inksmoor, and I think the problem we found was that our message was getting lost. So are we a finance company? Are we an outsource company? And when you're under one name, effectively, we're under, all our marketing goes out in one name, all our websites under one name. It was getting a bit lost. So Laura came on board to try and give us definition to that and look at, and the first thing she said was, we're going to rebrand it. I was like, okay, this is my baby. It's been my baby. And you've been here 5 minutes and you want to change it. Okay, fine. All right. Okay. But what does this look like? And to be fair, she's worked really hard with Gareth. I know you know Gareth, on that side of things. And we decided that our message, our outsourcing message, was lost in the Inksmoor name. So we took what we do, because again, clients didn't know that we did the accounts. They just thought we did control. So we thought, right, okay, let's just go out there and bring a new name and a new brand to that side of the business. So Inksmoor will remain and the finance will remain, and that will continue. But we wanted to separate out the outsourcing. It's a different marketplace. So the finance side is very broker-led, accountants, people like that, and commercial finance brokers, things like that. Whereas the other side is much different sell. You're selling to people like you, about what we can do for you as a business, and this is what we do. So yes, we rebrand today.
Brilliant.
So our new business name is Think Outsource, and we have a new site which is live now, thinkoutsource.co.uk, and we have a little animation that's going out tonight straight after this, which introduces you to our new little recruit and our logo. And just looking forward to it, actually, talking about it a little bit more with clients and new clients and old clients, actually revisiting them, talk about what we can do for them. But it seemed like the right time. We ummed and ahed. Do we launch? Do we delay? Do we launch? Do we delay? And I just thought, I can't be a negative seller. Okay. The only way we're going to get through this is to look for those marginal gains, as you said. Have you ever read a book called Black Box Thinking?
Yes, I have.
Right, brilliant book.
Great book.
Brilliant book, because it's always looking for those, talking about those marginal gains and what you should do and in those kind of scenarios. So I just thought, you know what, everybody is doom and gloom. This is really hard. It's really tough. It's tough for us. It's tough for a lot of businesses. But we have to be positive, and we have to go out there with a positive message, which is why we decided that we were going to go ahead and launch. So yes, think outsource for all your outsourcing needs. Goes live today.
I love that. So listen, we want to give big up Think Outsource. So Claire Harrison just put thinkoutsource.co.uk. So it's spelled as it's said. Gareth Falk has just put, he's just put, get your hair done in the pub. You know what? That might be a new business idea. That together. You think I'm joking? There'll be a couple of. We'll get the rights for that. Andrew Radley, Yobi's just said hi. Rachel's just said excited to hear about the rebrand. Great time to launch. You're right. Listen, don't feel guilty about sending messages that aren't empathetic to what's going on with other people. But quite frankly, anyone that's trading now and is a target organisation for you, they're trading right now. Why would you not want to reach out to those guys? And anyone that's not trading right now but would be interested in your products, they're not trading. Why would you not want to reach out to those guys? And actually, more importantly, and that's why we love this show, and that's why we love the energy this show brings. You know, we've reached just under 400,000 people in 12, 13 weeks on the platform. We've now got live stream, so we'll be going out on LinkedIn as well as Facebook. We got accreditation for that last week. We want to spread positive messages, and actually the more positive messages, I don't watch the news anymore. The news is nonsense. I watch the news once every couple of weeks when I need to. Like there's no positivity that comes out of it. There's no one's championing great stuff right now when it comes to COVID and Corona. And so I'm really keen to speak to businesses that are still, they're not necessarily growing. If they are, brilliant. They're still trading. They're still sending a narrative to them, to their target audience about this is what we do. This is how we can add value for you. And that's, you should never be, and Black Box, you're right. So the marginal thing there, it's a big sporting analogy, and it's, there's a link, and obviously coming from a pro sports background, we're all about the inches, or we're all about the extra yard, or we're all about, the extra bits that collectively make the big difference. Congratulations. That's all I want to say is congratulations. And I look forward to seeing that, the animation. I think animation is a great way of reaching your audience. It's impartial, it's informative, it's short, it's sharp, it's impactful. So I'm looking forward to that coming out. Listen, we're going to round up the interview now. Oh, wait, here we go. How do I pronounce that? Is it Ewa Wakely or Ewa?
Ava.
Ava, sorry, like literally. So I'm so sorry, Ava. It's a lovely name. There's no better time than now. 100%, as I said before, there's no better time than now. We always like to round off the interview by saying, listen, this situation is crazy. You know those situations where First World War, Second World War, you just can't comprehend it because it was listen, no one does, but great-grandparents and grandparents. We're going through something now which is bar a large-scale war, nothing will ever touch this. And so we always say that it's been absolutely terrible. It's been loss of life, which has been horrific. There's been businesses going under. There's been people losing their jobs. There has been some really poor things that come out of it. But you know me, I'm a half glass full, and the world needs to club together and focus on the positives to move forwards. I genuinely feel. In terms of one of the goods that has come out of this, some people have said, it's what's really good, shopping local. That's been really good. People are shopping local. What's been really good is the clapping for the NHS and that communal spirit. We only really know the neighbour each side of us. I now know the neighbours on my road within eye shot over the last 2 Thursdays. What do you think is going to be the one of the positives to come out of this situation?
From a wider perspective, from a high level down in terms of the actual country, I hope that it's a more accepting world that we live in. I think it's about support. I think, again, like you just said, supporting local businesses, small businesses, and giving, I'm not going to go political, and I'm not a deeply political person, but I think we've all seen the value that things like the NHS give to us as individuals and as a community. But from a personal perspective, it's about relationships. And what's come out of this is, for me, is I've recognized that I can't do what I do without the support of certain people in my life. Okay. And I think everybody, whether they're in business or not, needs to recognize and say thank you to the people that support them, whether that's as a business owner to your patrons or your clients, or whether it's an individual to your husband or your friends or your family, to say, actually, I can't do this without you. And I couldn't have got through this process without certain people in my life. So I think it's about cherishing those people and not forgetting what this feels like. Because I think it's all too easy to go back to normality and you forget. But actually, it's so important that we don't forget and that we use this as a platform to build on. That's what I would say. I
love it. You know what? That's beautiful, because, and I spoke to my guest two times before, was saying I work so hard to provide a great lifestyle for my kids, and I'm the same. Sometimes I'm a bit grumpy, sometimes I'm a little bit impatient, but I'm trying to work really hard to provide this lifestyle for them. And actually, this has given us a chance to get some perspective. This has given us a chance to you wouldn't have not said good thank you before because you're rude, because I know you and you're awesome, you're hearty, you're a massive heart. It would have just been one of those things. Life gets in the way. You don't ever get a chance to stop and take stock of your life and get some true perspective. And you're right, getting that true perspective enables you to do a couple of things. It enables you to understand what's really important in life and what's not blooming important in life. And the fact that you recognize what's really important, you want to say thank you to those people for the gift in your life that makes it better.
And wine and gin.
And yes, and listen, don't get me wrong. Let's not forget the safety.
My very special friends throughout this whole process. Gin and wine,
gin and wine. Well, listen, whether you thank them with gin or wine, or whether you're taking gin or wine to get through it, I think the method is the message is consistent. And the big thing that you said there is, I hope we don't change. And like all of the great things that come out of crisis, we want legacy, don't we? And legacy, we want some legacy. And if the legacy is just be kind, if the legacy is just be accepting, if the legacy is just collaborate, the legacy is to say thank you, the legacy is just for people that are really important in your life, just say thank you, then you know what, there might be some good that kind of comes out of this situation. And on the great timing there for Andrew Yorubi has said, you become strong by defying defeat and by turning loss and failure into success. And on that note, I want to say a massive thank you from myself, Nick Baxter, and the IsoNation team, Sarah, for being such a fantastic guest. Round of applause for my guest, Sarah Radley. Hopefully I'll catch up with you for that elusive. It's been a while since we've had a glass of fizz, but hopefully I'll catch up with you for that elusive glass of fizz. I wish you all the best with the new launch. And if anybody needs to know, it's called thinkoutsource.co.uk, and it's the new arm of Inksmoor Finance Group. Have a look at it. Wish you all the very best, and we'll catch up very soon, Sarah.
Thank you, Nick.
All right, pleasure. Catch up soon. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.